Welcome Friday Focus, November 18th, 2016. So we're going to talk about something that, I've been talking lately about the execution, 4 principles execution, which is your widely important goal, lead measures, have a compelling scorecard, and cadence of accountability. And I'm going to talk about something that kind of ties into this, but it's a little bit of a change. And we're going to continue talking about these 4 measures throughout the year. I'm going to talk about training. And when I was doing our WIG session with the executive team, WIG session is a wildly important goal session, identify one of the lead measures is how many hours do we commit to training. Not just a new person. Sometimes we think the new person needs to be trained, and that obviously they do. But what about like your continuing education? Are you able to, read? Are you able to, watch videos on different things that occur? We went to a growth summit in Dallas, took a big team down there, and it'd been nice for everybody to had shared that experience. Well, it's videotaped, and we can watch it. It's not practical to move 200 people down to Dallas, take up a whole plane. But that's something obviously we want you to have that same experience. So we're going to work on really getting good at training, and that's like a big commitment for the big year 2017. But we're going to start kind of working on making this an effort now. And with training, it's something that there's a little bit of a self-responsibility. So if somebody wants to learn, they're the one that's going to seek out training. But it also might be something we have more structured training. I see, when people are coming here as new employees, they're going to be a little timid because they're in a different environment. It's a little intimidating to be in that environment, and they might see something they want to do or interact, but they might tend to be quiet and stand there and watch. And I would liken this to, let's say, all of you have driver's licenses, but you watched your parents drive for 16 years. But did that prepare you for grabbing the steering wheel? And it didn't. And from driver's training, since we have to train everybody how to drive a car, there's a lot of standardization in it. We realize that they take some class work, and you get behind the wheel. You don't sit there and watch the trainer drive the car around. You actually get behind the wheel and touch the steering wheel, and you have blinkers. And the driver's trainer's got like when mine did, I don't know if they have it now, he had a brake he could hit. You stamp on it if you were, getting out of control. I don't know if they do that anymore. But the idea was that he could take control of a bad situation, but he or she are still letting you, make mistakes and learn from it. So I'm going to talk about two key aspects, of getting trained or training somebody, learning. Number one is when you are training somebody, you must learn to accept imperfection. Okay? And too often we don't let people do things because it's easier to do it myself, or I can do a better job of it, or I can do it quicker or faster or more consistently. You're afraid to accept imperfection, so you're standing in the sunlight so it can't shine on another person. Okay? Because the only way they can get to their level of perfection is if they're actually, doing it and learning. And I think the first thing is, until you can accept imperfection, you can't really train. Okay? And then, there's certain imperfections that maybe we can't really tolerate, but most of them we can. I was seeing different training situations where there wasn't any critical things going on, and, maybe we're still expecting perfection, so we weren't really training people. So the person that's being trained needs to get their hands on. And you'll find some people need a little bit more paperwork beforehand, a little more reading, and some people want to touch things right away. I know when I'm training doctors and PAs, I can immediately sense what their Colby score is based on how quickly they grab something out of my hand. And the quicker they grab something, I realize, okay, this person needs to touch everything. Somebody else will want to talk to me a lot more. They might leave the room and want to talk about how I made decisions, okay? Well, eventually when you get to all those different things, but it allows me to understand how they learn. But in each case, I'm going to engage them. I'm going to want the PA talking to the patient. And I'm going to talk to the patient talk to the PA in front of the patient so they understand this interaction. I'm going to want the doctor, the PA, to start putting their hands on the equipment and learn how to do it. And accepting imperfection is step one towards being a great trainer. And the reality is all of you eventually become trainers. Even if you're brand new, you're going to train somebody eventually. You're going to be proficient enough at some point where we're adding to our team and you're training somebody. And number 2 is you must learn to accept failures yourself if you're going to be trained. And too often, people, when they have a failure, they don't want to accept failures. It sounds really bad. Maybe we shouldn't use the word failures. But if you accept failures, that means you've acknowledged them, and then you learn from them, and you try to do something and not make that same mistake again. But without acknowledging or identifying your failures, you can't realize that it was a failure. Okay, you'll think it's something besides a failure, and you might keep doing it. But if you accept that this was a failure, I screwed this up, and the reason I screwed up was because of this or that thing, and I'm going to do it better next time by changing this. I was listening to a sales meeting. It was almost comical. There was a Cool Scalp U people here, and they were talking about overcoming objections. And one of the objections was that somebody could say, well, I got to go home and talk to my husband first. Like, really, the husband's going to want to get involved in that conversation. It's not going to look fat. I mean, there's no husband that wants to get in this conversation whether or not their wife should be doing a fat reduction procedure, right? But that's an objection. It's really kind of a stall. And so the trainer says, well, I call him out on it. What I do is I give him the phone and say, call your husband. I'm like, whoa, wait here. So I stopped the meeting at that point. I said, look, admit the fact that you messed up. And I didn't use the word messed. I used a stronger word than that. I said, admit the fact that you messed up to yourself, and then learn what you could do next time to do better. Because you came in here for Cool Sculpting, you didn't sell them on it, and something happened, something went wrong, and blaming them and intimidating the patient or blaming their husband is, the wrong thing. So realize you didn't make the sale. And then after we had that discussion, a lot of ladies admitted, yeah, they use that excuse all the time. Even if they're not married, you might say, I'm going to go home and talk to my husband, because that's a stall that nobody can overcome. The key is accepting that you didn't perform the level you needed to. And if you can accept that, you can grow. And failure is a stepping stone towards success. Okay, so failure is what's necessary to learn. Failure is necessary to grow. Failure is necessary to adapt. Okay, if you have no mistakes or failures, you are not growing. Okay, you might think that's because you're perfect. Most of you probably are not that unhumble that you think that. But if you don't make any mistakes, you're not really growing as a person or a professional. So number one is, if you're training somebody, you must learn to accept imperfection. Okay, the person that you're training probably can't do it as good as you. That's why you're training them. And you should put them in their hands on right away. Okay, if it's something like doing a complex surgery, there's a lot more steps to go through. We go through a residency and a lot of training. If it's something like operating a computer system, that might be where you get away and let them sit down and touch the keyboard, move the mouse around. I know when somebody's trying to train me on software, we had the Next Tech and Emma trainers. They're popping around the mouse and jumping around. I have no idea what the hell they're doing. But if I can touch it myself and they tell me where to punch, I get a better understanding of it. So number one is accepting imperfection. Number two, you're a person that's being trained. Accept that failure occurs at the expense of growth. Okay? Failure occurs at the expense of learning. And obviously there's big failures and little failures. I don't want to get into that. You know what they are. But if you can acknowledge your failures, you can learn and adapt from them. If you don't realize they're failures, you might be screwing up and not knowing it. So maybe your cohort should point it out to you. But you got to identify, accept, and move on when you make failures. And that's in the process of learning and growing and developing, is making some mistakes and then learning from them. So that's Friday Focus. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.